agenda. First, we want to understand the changes that are happening globally and regionally. We'll have two presentations in this first part. First, Mr. Gonzalo Salinas, fruit and vegetables analyst for Rabobank, will be addressing the macro trends in the blueberry industry. Secondly, Mr. Felipe Silva, president of the Blueberry Committee and Sur Group's general manager, will be addressing a season analysis of South American blueberries. We hand the floor to Mr. Gonzalo Salinas. Good morning, everyone. I am Gonzalo Salinas. I'm a senior analyst for fruits and vegetables for Rabobank and connected to Rabo Finance Chile with more than 130 researchers around the world giving expert opinion and market analysis to our clients and industry. This presentation will be stored in the convention's website, so you can take pictures, but also you can download it later. So, to provide some context, we have seen different changes in the market and the industry. In this first part, we will go over the changes in the market with a clear context regarding uncertainty. We cannot ignore that. This is something that has been present in the last 2 to 4 years, even before the pandemic, with the first geopolitics changes and the trade wars between China and the United States. We also faced an unexpected situation that has marked the current scenario, which is the European war between Russia and Ukraine, and also the pandemic and the way it has affected the entire system with supply shocks, demand stimulus shocks, and which has led to changes in the logistics systems, trade systems, and supply chain systems, exposing their vulnerabilities. First, we will address inflation in the most important market for South American blueberry, which is the United States. We will see how here and since the pandemic's inflation, as we've seen before, has risen to a peak level in the end of 2021, and there has been a trend, a recovery trend, and we can see how the supply and demand factors have been equally contributing to this stabilization. Also in Europe, we can see the growth of real wage values, and we can see now that we have already passed the worst moment of the pandemic and of the inflation brought by the pandemic in the United States. We can see that we haven't reached the levels pre-pandemic or pre-war levels, but there is a recovery trend. And this is also true for logistics, and this is very much true for the blueberry industry. The way that the trust indexes were at around 75% before the pandemic, it has gone down to 35% in 2022, and now there is a upward trend since the last season.
There is a drop in December 2022, and here I would like to highlight something, how this period of time from December to January in the last 5 years period, we can see the main drops with the worst one is January 22, where we had 30%. If we see into the future, we can see that there is a catch-up in the left-hand side with the recovery in 2022. This was experienced in the field of cherries and blueberries as well. We can observe that into the future, and according to the different factors, including the cost of transportation, should go down based on many other factors. And the most important ones are the major availability for the supply of transportation with ships and capacity for the different connections. Another important point to highlight in the recent years is the cost of fertilizers. fertilizers also achieved a level that was never seen before, unprecedented, although this is included in different cycles, including the start of the pandemic and then the factor of the war in Europe led to levels that were unprecedented. We're seeing a catching up in the case of the fertilizers. We see this level that has been already exceeded as a result of the war, and we still need to regain terrain regarding the levels we had previous to the pandemic. We see this last thing that is also under discussion, and this is one of the points I wanted to highlight. This is still underway. That is to say, we still have more to experience, and we see in different marketplaces in the United States, for example, that is not so depending from the energy as Europe is, and Europe is experiencing a war event, and any of these factors could lead to a more beneficial or negative situation. In China now, they are having a recovery. Till 6 months ago, nobody has expected this, but fortunately, it occurred. In China, we are also seeing macro changes in the mid and long terms, and we heard a month ago the news showing that the Chinese population is going to decrease in the future. And all of these factors are to be considered as well. Now, concerning the economical or economic growth, and the OECD in the last report is showing a recovery. But we should also stress here the situation with each one of the marketplaces and their performance in the Asia region is not the same pattern. We see a recovery in 2023, and in 2024 there is a piecemeal recovery. It's not the case in the United States where they are trying to put this backward in order to curb this recession in United Kingdom and Germany and the 10 most important nations in 23 are going to experience a negative trend, but a more secure recovery. So what can we expect for the short term if we can land this at the level of the consumers? There will be changes in the demands of consumers and the response of the consumer will change also. This is a piece of information that I took from animal protein data, but this can be applied to different markets. So we can see that this is a process underway. And the main important points of four main important points is turning towards the less expensive produce. The important thing is that the consumer is looking for value, as we're going to observe later on. This does not mean that they don't want to consume blueberries. Now, at the retail level, we can see the same changes taking place. We can see this inflation and showing the different alternatives, shrink inflation. And in the United States, we observe therefore how the consumers are looking for further value for the transactions concerned and how this variation month to month is taking place and the visits to the retail places in the USA in 2022. The category in general terms had negative figures, particularly in the second term of the year, but we can see that according to the different categories in the retail markets and the convenience stores are having a difference compared to other stores, including the premium ones. So now we'll go into the second part of the presentation concerning the main changes in the blueberries markets. We have followed this for 10 years now, and one of the main changes that occurred is the productive matrix. As we started in the last decade with 200,000 tons exported, led by the United States, Canada, and Chile, with over 20 or 75% of the exports worldwide. Last decade, we saw some changes with the inclusion of Peru, Mexico, Spain, and Morocco. And also the share by other countries has increased, and we can see the supply is duplicating in the last decade. For example, Peru is the leader for this worldwide market. Chile is losing terrain, and the rest of the countries as well. And the overall exportation volume is around 800,000 tons. We have also a change in production terms. We went from this traditional pattern in the coast of South America and parts of Europe, and now we have the worldwide scenario where we see productions in everywhere. In China, for example, we see a new important producer that is not clearly observed, but we can see that the production and consumption is increasing there. There is a change. Therefore, in the United States, it is evolving the last 10 years, and they are having these weekly arrivals, and we have this transition from the offer of United States and Canada, and then from Uruguay and Chile, and part of Mexico, and coming back to this of supply by the United States. At the middle of the last decade, we have the inclusion of Europe for the early supply, and then what we saw in the previous season 2022 with this offer from the United States, North America, and Chile, and we observe already this change in the year where we see the three major players participating not in equal terms but sharing the marketplace. This is just to show you the situation into the future. The blueberries are the most important fruits within the supply for the United States, and the growth rate in the consumption within the American marketplace is blueberries occupy the third place compared to the beginning and the end of the decade. We can see that the blueberries are growing in this period of time over 5%. If we compare this with the two other fruits that are spearheading, we can see that the blueberries are favorite fruits for consumption in the United States after the raspberries and pistachios with different colors in bars that are lagging behind. So we can see the scenario is very difficult and different now. And I'm showing here the trend for the scenario of the United States. This market is changing a lot, and the trends show how the consumers are preferring now a certain kind of fruits that are more nutritious. In here, we do not include apples and watermelons, and the blueberries still have a lot to go and to move forward in order to gain more market share. The level of this segmentation of market is at the seventh rank of the most consumed fruits according to the industry. It could be even higher in the rank. And we are looking into the future, and we're considering particularly the United States and how they will continue to increase the consumption rate and try to keep this value for the renewal of varieties and different packaging methods. And we have a lot to explore there, and I hope that we'll see this in the next coming presentations. Now, in the market of blueberries, we are seeing something similar, particularly in this sector where we see the blueberry coming up in the south area with Peru, South Africa, and the local supply from South Africa and other countries. Then we have the transition of Chile, and at the end of the season, we have also the participation of Morocco and other local countries. This shows now the review of the last 4 years for this context after the pandemic. And as a matter of fact, we can see that the signals are very confusing, to say it straightforward. We can see that the blueberries within this listing of fruits is the only fruit that is showing this upward trend in the volume of kilos of consumption per person. In the 4 last years, we would say that the blueberries were not touched by the pandemic or the war event or other factors. And this goes away from everything that we observed in the previous events with different or similar crises, where the less expensive fruits had a higher consumption. Well, we see that the bananas and the melons have a lesser value, and the blueberries or strawberries increased in consumption. So it's not very easy to foresee what will come in the future. There are many factors to explain this, and we consider rather the transaction of fruits And regardless of the value of fruits, we can see that the blueberries are the only ones showing this increase in the value. It's not the case for the mangoes and avocados, but as we saw in the American market, we see that this is lagging behind in the market of fruits, and there is still leeway to grow. And we encounter some challenges in order to keep the value. Now, concerning the Chinese market, I apologize for not including the updated figure for China, but if we see here the availability of blueberries, I was saying that China is unnoticed because they are not present in the exporting, worldwide exporting market, but they have an availability of around 10 months, and the production comes depending on the source that you verify, they can be the second or third worldwide, and this is compared to the supply of Chile and Peru. We can see that the export volume is dominating for the Chinese market, and we can observe that for the future, the per capita consumption is going to continue in China. The projection is to continue to grow, and the exporting supply of Australia and New Zealand are considering China as well as a destination market. And this growth in China will go still lower. And this per capita consumption that is projected for 2024 is supported by this increase in exports. If I go back, the change in this producing matrix is also complemented by different players, as we already alluded to Morocco, South Africa, and other countries and in Europe that are participating and are complementing this supply from Chile. So, to wrap up my presentation, I would like to say now that the major challenge is this one related to value, what we see for the future and concerning the value of blueberries in the destination markets. We need to provide the context, first of all, because I cannot pretend or intend to have this value with the case of Peru. But if we focus on the last 5 seasons, we'll see how this is losing or decreasing the value. And now, if we observe this according to the different destination markets, we can observe the performance of this price drop that is different. In Asia, maybe we have a more significant participation, and this is what is being reflected by this drop in the level of prices. Therefore, and to conclude now, we have these 4 C's in what we have published. The 4 C's of in Spanish for quality, consistency, convenience. Each one of these factors is associated to the different parts of the productive chain of the blueberries. The quality from the production point of view, with the different challenges, the costs for the last 3 years, the cost at the level of manpower, labor, logistics, mechanization, and how we see the conditions and the shelf life. And we already have the researchers in place, and I would like to highlight what we did a couple of weeks ago on the development of technologies and the consistencies, how we reach the destination market in order to have a supply that is consistent as possible, regardless of the different flavors, shapes, and so on, what the customer expects to have.
How to have flexible fruits that compete with all the offer that we see in Europe and United States, how it can compete and really outstand or stand out due to its versatility, also different modes of consumption, packaging, ways of consuming it frozen or fresh, and the way it follows future trends in the market, generational changes, different trends and fashions. So the industry has many challenges ahead, and we hope this will provide information to continue the discussions during this convention. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to see very good presentations and trends in what's left of this convention.